and I'll give a little bit of background of how I came up with this topic and why it means so much to me. So my name is Tracy Ramsey. I'm an Associate Dean of Academic Affairs. I'm at the Plano campus. And I've been with the college for 18 years in the spring. And 15 years were taught teaching kinesiology. And during that time, I found that I would get a resource, and then just when I thought I knew everything, there would be another resource that was really good. And so 12 years in, I still am finding these wonderful things that other people have known about for years and other colleagues of mine had never heard of. And so I thought, you know, these resources are great, but they're all over the place. We need something to kind of put it together in one place to give us a more holistic approach to students and how we can support them better. So today that I'm hoping you will learn more about the importance of a holistic education for students. I'm hoping that you'll learn how to just sort of develop a healthy personal relationship and talking points that are going to help move them forward. I'm going to give you a list of resources. By the way, I am going to give you this PowerPoint. It is being recorded, and I will also share some of the other tips and information at the end with you. We'll get that email to you. But most importantly, I'm going to go over some of the academic impediments, the reason that students are not successful nationwide, what Collin has in common with that. And once we point those out, you'll see a trend in how they all start to come together and feed off of each other, which is a common theme you're going to see when we come up with resources available to tackle these issues. They're repetitive, but maybe you hadn't thought of using it in this way. So some of the resources you may be familiar with, I may present them in a new way, but some may also be new to you. I want to just give a poll now of questions. So Allison, if you could pull that up for me, question number 1. Generally, I've done this workshop for many years, or probably 4 or 5 years. And I always give a pre-test. It's the professor in me, forgive me. But I want to test your knowledge. And so I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to just answer those questions if you would. Are we able to see the results?
I will end the poll.
Has everybody answered?
Not yet, not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, got it. Too fast. Need more time? Everybody done? Okay.
I'll go ahead and end the poll.
Okay. All right. So you're going to get answers to those questions. I'm not going to leave you hanging, but I know at the end, you're going to be able to make sure that you have all the answers, and you're going to say, oh yeah, I didn't realize that from the pre and post test. So we'll jump right in here. If I spill all the beans early, you may log off and not get what I want you to get. Okay, so a holistic approach is necessary because it allows us to look at take a comprehensive approach to students, because we care about their intellectual and emotional and social, physical and artistic and creative and spiritual potential. We care about all that. We want to encourage students, but we still want to have the professional boundary from a professor to student, or however, whatever your role is and how you interact with them. But we also want to make sure that we meet their unique needs. And some of the tools that I think I have prepared for you today will show you how to do that. This is quite interesting. When we look at the what are the needs of students across the country, nationwide, the American College Health Association and the National College Health Association do a survey every year. They've done this survey for at least 10 years. I've been following this data. This year, spring 2020, they did it over 75 colleges and universities, over 50,000 surveys sent out. I will tell you it's probably slightly down from COVID, because in previous years, it's about 95 to 100 colleges with about 70,000 surveys out there. 50,000 surveys still gives us lots of information. And when they ask students, what are those things that prevent you from being the most successful academically? The number one reason from left to right: procrastination, stress, anxiety, depression, sleep difficulties, finances, intimate relationships, careers, headaches, and migraines. And you can see, or I hope to show you, that how these are all interconnected with each other. For example, if you're procrastinating, that's going to increase your stress, which could lead to depression, which is almost certainly going to lead to sleep difficulties. And they all feed on each other. Interestingly, they changed the data for spring 2020, and they have always asked, have you received information on this topic, and are you interested in receiving information on this topic? And they didn't include it this year. I was a little disappointed with that, but I think it's so important. I've included this information from the 2018 data. And so what I want you to look at is the data from on the left-hand side, the chart, but I want you to focus on the pink. And so the question was, have you received information on the following topics? So if you ask them, the majority of students have seen, look, 35.6% have already heard about and received information on stress reduction and depression and anxiety. Interestingly, they had not received a lot of information about sleep difficulties, which inspired me to do a whole project about sleep that I'm going to show you a little bit later. But you know, one of the other things it says, have you received information on problem with internet use? And 83.4% said yes. But if you look over to the right, it says, are you interested in receiving some information on it? They don't want you to tell them about their internet use, 30.6%. They don't want to hear about that. But you see, they still want to hear about stress reduction, depression and anxiety, sleep difficulties. They still want to hear about cold, flu, sore throat. They probably want to hear about COVID, although we may be tired of COVID now. And relationship difficulties. That's still an area of interest. And when we have pockets of support around Collin, we need to be able to filter that and pull it together for the student to make it easier. So let's just look at these one step at a time. We know that procrastination leads to missed opportunities and poor performance and can easily increase stress. And so when you're talking to students, you want to talk to them about getting organized, time management, limit distractions. I know in my house, when it's time to work, maybe at the end of the week, the desk may look like this, but before I start an important project, I want to clean my area up so that I can make sure that I'm focused. And so some of these tips, while they sound so simple to us because we may have mastered this skill, 18-year-olds may not have mastered this skill. And so it's worth revisiting if you find that students are struggling with procrastination. So when I taught and a student came to me and said, hey, I need an extension on this paper. Yes, you can have an extension, but you're going to have to go watch this YouTube video on procrastination. Or you may have to write a paper, 1 or 2 page paper about procrastination. I would also weave it in somehow so that they could also get the information so that they could be prepared. One that told him, okay, I'm going to give you a break this time. but I need you to learn something from it, and I'm not taking any more late work from this point. So it was an opportunity to just, instead of just saying, yes, I'll take this late, to take it a step further and put some responsibility back on the student and encourage them. Some of the resources that we have available, and as we go through this presentation, I'm going to share some resources with you. It's the Counseling Center. So when you have students who are suffering or dealing with procrastination issues, one of the things that you may do is refer them to the Counseling Center website. That's just a quick email. I think I saw the chat light up. If you all have any questions throughout, I certainly don't mind. Allison, if they have questions, you can just stop me and I'll make sure that I can answer questions.
Absolutely. Right now, it's just Madison sharing that she loves the idea of supporting students, yet using it as a learning opportunity.
Yes, good, good, good. Okay, so, so for me, procrastination, acknowledge that it exists. It happens, let's learn from it. We can't keep taking your late work, but we can teach you something along the way. The second and third biggest barriers to academic performance, positive, successful academic performance, is stress and anxiety. Those two are closely related. They're not the same things, but they're closely related. And so when we look at the statistics, we see that it's the biggest source of stress for adults ages 18 to 33. The top three: work, money, job stability. And I can imagine that that's gotten even worse in times of COVID. There are similar stresses among men and women. In other words, men and women have work, money, and job stability as their top three, but women tend to experience higher stress levels. And men are less likely to go and take action for stress reduction and anxiety reduction techniques. They're less likely to go get help.
Tracy, we do have one question. Is there a specific procrastination video that you could recommend to our attendees?
I did not include it, but let me include that in your list of resources, and I'm just going to make a note here.
Wonderful.
And
Thank
I
you.
will send that to you.
Thank you.
Got it. Procrastination video, check. 58% of students report feeling overwhelmed in the past 2 weeks. The past 2 weeks, we're talking almost 60% of students. And again, this is not COVID data. You can imagine how high that number is now. 32% of students report feeling very sad in the past 2 weeks, and 43.6% of students report more than average stress levels in the past 12 months. And so when you're dealing with students that you can tell are stressed, it's not personal with you. If they're struggling in your class and they get overwhelmed, this is like 60% of students who are experiencing this in the past 2 weeks. We have to have resources and ways to support them. So let's get to the fun part. The Counseling Center, I just took you to that website. We'll be visiting that again shortly. Think about this. In terms of the fitness center, when you talk about stress reduction techniques, when you talk about and link that with cardiovascular exercise, it is very effective at reducing stress. There's some research out there that says they looked at high school students, and a high school study in Ohio, and they looked at students who were taking difficult classes, either math or science. And they found that they called it 0 credit hour. So students would come in at 7. I know, can you imagine a high school student waking up early and being in PE at 7 o'clock in the morning? But when they did cardiovascular exercise, and they followed them over 2 years, they did much better in those tough classes that were scheduled immediately after. And so what I would tell my students is when we had a test, I would say, you got to do a couple things. I need you to get enough sleep. Please do not cram the night before for this test. Do not think that that's going to go, the information is going to go to your long-term memory. It's not. It's going to go to your short-term memory. You won't be able to recall it, and you're not going to do well on the test. So little bits and pieces every day, I would call it bathroom reading, where you just need 15 minutes to just sit there, read through the information, and come test time, you'd be amazed at how much memory you have for the material. When we talked about preparing for the test, so not only are they going to get enough sleep, 8 to 12 hours, I need them to eat prior to the test. I don't need you to be hungry, and I need you to do exercise within 24 hours prior to the test. Anecdotally, the students would tell me that they did well. I never did formal research on it, but there is research out there that shows that students do better. Your stress is reduced within 24 to 48 hours after doing aerobic exercise. And so if you got into the habit of doing aerobic exercise on Monday, you would be good until Wednesday at the very latest, right? And then you'd have these benefits of these positive, happy things, chemicals being released in your brain that you don't even have to take drugs for, which then helps reduce your stress levels and help you feel happier. And so when we talk about the fitness center, you'd be amazed. There are several students and faculty and staff who don't even know that the fitness center exists. My background is in kinesiology, so of course I spent half my time in the weight room. But for now, the weight room is not open, but we do have some online classes. I'm going to show you how to get to that soon. But as we prepare to move forward, I think in spring there's a tentative plan to maybe try to open fitness centers. I've not been a part of the full discussions, but I think we're moving towards that. This is a resource that you can have on every campus for students. Again, this is a quick email. You see that a student is stressed, you can say, I noticed that you were stressed today. I hope that I'm going to provide these tools for you. I hope you take advantage of it. Let me know if you need anything. And you send a link to the Plano Fitness Center and to the Counseling Center, and then you're done. You can follow up with a conversation if you're comfortable with that, but at least it acknowledged that you care about the student, you went the extra mile, and it took you about 3 minutes to type that email. So the video for wellness classes, if you want to do some stretching, some Pilates, you can just click here. I think you have to be logged into Cougar Web to access it. I am good. You've got some virtual conferences here for future leaders. Here's some wellness classes that they have here, some scavenger hunts and other things that can help you, and reference this to the students where they can just sort of engage with each other. It's really interesting information, and it's a good opportunity to introduce this stuff to them. So I'll let you sort of browse that website in your own free time. The wellness program has a stress management page. That's not coming up. I'll send it to you in a link, but basically it's a stress management page. It's got other links to videos and stress reduction techniques. The mindfulness committee, which is the next thing here, they have a little blurb on there where they have information. The mindfulness committee does lots of work, especially during final exam times for students. They have mindful sessions, they have yoga sessions, meditation sessions, where they can come in and just sort of deep breathe and decompress for 30 minutes prior to their exam. I think they sometimes give out snacks, sometimes they're not able to, and they send the student on their way. And that's been well received, and that program has been building over time. Intramurals, you think of sports, typically when you think of intramurals. I want to encourage you to think bigger than that. Pre-COVID, intramurals had things like ropes courses. If you've heard of escape rooms, they would offer those for free for students, not to faculty and staff. But they are a room where you would go in with a group of friends and you all have to solve clues in order to get out and go to the next room. But basically what we're trying to encourage is this system of support that the students build, because the more they're engaged, the more they feel supported, the more they're involved, the more successful they are in school. So again, going back to the holistic approach, students are more likely to be successful when we look at their whole being and try to address all the areas there. So again, it's not just athletics. There are many things out there. They're not offering them now because of COVID, but I think in spring, the plan is to try to introduce those things. So please take a look at that website. And the Career Center has things. They've got, let's pull it up here if it's gonna work. all sorts of assessments that students can take. We're going to revisit this for some other things. Some students get nervous because they don't know what career path to take. I remember when I was 18 years old entering college, I took one of these tests that said, hey, based on your personality and the things you like, you're probably going to best be better at these career paths. And certainly I was, not because of the test, but because I was already interested in that. But it sort of gave me more direction and focus. I mean, I knew I didn't want to do at the time an 8-to-5 kind of job. I didn't see myself sitting behind a desk. So I took comfort in the fact that I ruled out things. And sometimes when you're young and you're in your college career, or even when you're returning, you just know you want to do something different, but you might not want to know yet what it is. And so to rule out things progresses you along that path. And so taking a self-assessment that is certainly free can help guide students decrease their stress, decrease anxiety, and those sorts of things. All right, I hit that by accident. Number 4, barrier to academic success is depression. It's a common medical illness that negatively affects how you feel, the way you think, and how you act. And they recently surveyed students, and 48.8, that's almost 50% of people report feeling lonely. This is why something as simple as an email, a recognition, or, hi Tracy, I noticed when you came to class last time you mentioned that you had a family member who is sick. Are they better now? It's just a quick connection that you have with the students so that they know that you're listening to them. This doesn't solve depression, but it can help people feel that they're not alone, and maybe be a resource that they feel comfortable coming to you to say, I think she cares about me. Let me see if there's something she can do to help me along my journey. When we talk about depression also, women are twice as likely to experience depression compared to men. Men most often mask their depression with alcohol and drug abuse, or they work a lot of hours. 15.4% of college students report that depression has had a serious impact on their academic performance in the past 12 months. I think there's a need here based on it being the number 4 to academic barriers. And when they asked the specific question, maybe students hadn't connected how their depression affected their academic performance, but 15.4 did. When we look at the counseling center, because what we want to do is examine these resources, when we look at the counseling center, I want to highlight for you their fall seminar schedule. And next semester, it'll say the spring seminar schedule. And it talks about the counseling services and the things that they have to offer. But down here, look, lessons in self-esteem, time management, drug trends, coping with change, procrastination is one of them. That was the number 1 barrier. You can also recommend that a student attend a procrastination course and have them show that they signed it. I'm sure that there's a way to keep a record of that. Prepare for test anxiety. I would tell my students, sometimes if you really have test anxiety, go to one of these sessions. I had some that I would recommend sit in the same seat every time if you can. And if it's possible, maybe after hours, you try to come to the classroom and study sitting in the same seat. All those things I found to be helpful. So I just wanted you to see that this is here. We are tending to use Canvas a lot more in our communication with students. And so this is something that you can easily link to and share with students so that they know. Or you could just say, here's a trend. I had half the class asked to submit their papers late. I'm really going to encourage you all to go to this procrastination lecture that they're going to have in a few weeks. So it's just another tool. No, we don't want to close all tabs. Let's just do this. All right. Fitness center, we talked about how aerobic exercise impacts it. Depression, when you look at mild to moderate depression, aerobic exercise has been shown to be equally as effective as medication. Doesn't happen this way in severe depression, but in mild to moderate, it does. Again, I taught kinesiology. We talked about depression. We talked about lots of things in my courses. And I would never say, stop taking your medicine and just do aerobic exercise. That's a conversation you have to have with your doctor. But I can certainly say aerobic exercise is something that can help decrease those depression tendencies. And so I've even found in the field of counselors, many say to me part of their sessions with their clients is that they're recommending and almost prescribing aerobic exercise as part of the therapy process to help students know. And just so you are clear, weight training, which is anaerobic exercise, doesn't have the same effect. It needs to be aerobic exercise, which is going to be at least 20 minutes of getting your heart rate up significantly. Okay? The stress management page that I couldn't get to earlier has information about depression. Intramurals, again, you're trying to connect students with others so that they can develop this sense of support. What is unique to Collin College, not unique to Collin, is unique to community college students, is that they typically want to come to campus for their classes and then leave. We want to find ways that they're engaged and that they can connect with others. And intramurals has been pretty successful at doing that. If you find, though, that some of your students are really struggling, you have this option, the strategies of behavioral intervention. And this is where, you can see here, it talks about their mission, it talks about their purpose, but basically if you've got a troubled student that you're concerned about, whether their behavior is inappropriate in class, or you are just concerned about them in general, you can submit a SOBI report. Be aware that the student is going to find out you submitted that report. But don't be afraid of it, because what they do is they're able to check on the students, provide them resources, and let them know that someone cares. In many instances, I've heard the Dean of Students say that they've asked police to do well checks on students. And they've been very helpful for students to just find out, okay, someone is looking for me, I'm going to be missed, and there are options out there. So take a look at this when you have a free moment. Sleep difficulties. It's the fifth barrier to successful academic performance. But I also want to stress, if you remember the slides of have you received information on this, the answer was it was a low number, that not many had received information. But then also, do you want to receive information? And it was one of the higher numbers. And so many years ago when I was teaching in 2015, I was inspired to work with our polysomnography program at the McKinney campus. That's the sleep program. And so we got together and I created about an hour or two of videos that I divided into short sessions. And I'm going to show you those in just a second. But basically what we did was we talked about different topics, the importance of sleep. How does that affect the time zone change? And by the way, the answer is your brain can't get used to this. It takes about 3 weeks. So whether you're losing an hour or gaining an hour, it still takes time. There are more accidents during this time, hospital visits during the time of the time change. When we look at sleep difficulties, and I hear professors say this student fell asleep in class and they get very upset, and I understand the tendency to do that, and if that bothers you, I get it. For me, I look at it as if, was there an opportunity for me to engage that student more? Not necessarily to embarrass the student and say, hey, Tracy, wake up, but what could I do to engage the class to discourage folks feeling like there's even time to fall asleep? But the responsibility is not just on the professor or the person leading that group. It is also a conversation with what's going on. So when students fell asleep in my class, I would all wait until after class. I'd try to kind of walk by them and raise my voice a little bit, maybe nudge them a bit, and they would wake up and get the hint. But sometimes I would ask to see them after class and say, hey, what's going on? And I'd have students to say to me, I got switched to the second shift, and this class is at 8:30 in the morning and it started off fine, but I'm exhausted now. And so then it's a conversation of what can we do to try to help that student. If I always taught a 2:30 class, the same class, and I would say, let's see about transferring you to this 2:30 class that's going to be better if it matched their shift or not. But instead of being offended as my first reaction for a student falling asleep, my first reaction was, what can I do to find out what's going on with the student and how can I impact that in a positive way? So people ages 32 to 29 are the sleepiest members of the US population. And a little over 40% of them report feeling tired and sleepy during the last 3 to 5 days. I bet if you've been watching the election stuff, you've probably been having some late nights. We may be in that category. But we know that sleep deficiencies are linked to poor academic performance, weight gain, increased alcohol abuse, accidents, daytime drowsiness, relationship issues, and depression. And I don't know about you, but if you remember the slide that I showed you, look at this third circle and look at how many of these are already in common with what we've discussed so far. So you can see where sleep deficiencies compound some of the other issues that students could be experiencing. So what are some resources we have? Well, I'm going to let you take a look at one of the videos that we created. I'm going to also share with you these videos. You have access to them in Canvas. I will send you directions of how to download them in Canvas, but you can pull them into your course. You can use all 20 of them. You can use one of them. It doesn't matter. Whatever you decide to do, we can. I'll just show you a few minutes of the video. If it will work. So what are some sleep
into your office, you're turning your bedroom into your entertainment zone, then your brain's going to associate. That's where I go to, have some sort of mental stimuli. But if you take those things out of the bedroom, then your brain's going to start to associate the bedroom with sleep. So you want to have electronic devices out of the bedroom. You want to keep your bedroom cool, dark, and quiet. So you want it to be dark because dark light is what regulates your melatonin. And your melatonin is what makes you sleepy, but it's also what keeps you asleep throughout the night. So if you're not getting enough melatonin push right before bed, then you're not going to sleep well throughout the night. So melatonin is regulated by light. So usually between the hours of 8 and 10 p.m. is when we get our big melatonin push for the night to get us to sleep. And if we don't get it big enough of that push in that time frame, then it's not going to carry us through the night. So you're going to see a lot more fragmented sleep throughout the night. Another thing is keeping it cool. Your core body temperature drops when you go to sleep. So if your room's too hot, it can't get to that drop and stay at that drop. And so you're going to wake up a lot throughout the night. So if you're too hot in your room, it's going to fragment your sleep. And then also too, noise can wake you up. So you got to keep it quiet. So we have some people that'll say, I can't sleep in pure silence. So I need some sort of, noise there. Get yourself a box fan. Let that be, kind of what you use as your white noise to get you to sleep, because it's a consistent sound. If you're listening to music or if you're watching TV, there's fluctuations in volume on music and on TV, and especially if you're watching late night TV, infomercials come on. Every sleep study I've ever watched where somebody's got the TV going, the minute that they start clapping in an infomercial, they're up. So, you've got to keep a consistent sound. It will wake you up. There's different things that you can do to get yourself more in a sleep mode. One of the things that we suggest is to take a hot shower before you go to bed. When you take a hot shower, it elevates your body temperature. You step into that cool room, it's going to go and so that's going to make you sleepy. So that's something that you can do. Also, too, 30 minutes before going to bed, do stuff that's relaxing. If you're doing stuff that's too mentally stimulating, that's going to affect your ability to get to sleep. So make it more of a relaxation And then, you know, when you go to the bedroom, that's for the purpose of sleep. So if you can't fall asleep after laying in bed for 20 minutes, get out of bed, do something that's going to make you tired, then come back to bed. Because if you just lay there awake, your brain also will disassociate the bed with sleep.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. All right. So just another resource. I also just want to pause for a second to say that the polysomnography program offers free sleep studies. I have recommended to several students to go. So if a student says, I'm really sleepy, you know, we talk about what's your work schedule like, what's your stress schedule like, does counseling need to get involved, what can we do? But if we suspect that maybe there's sleep apnea, and I'm not a doctor, you just ask, do you snore? Do you have trouble falling asleep and then, or can you go to sleep and you wake up in the middle of the night? There are different issues. I say go to the polysomnography program, volunteer for a sleep study, which they have. It looks like an apartment bedroom. They have a bed in there. They've got a dresser in there. You come in the late afternoon, evening. They let you go to sleep. You have these electrodes in your hair, and then they're watching you as you sleep at night. When you wake up, you can shower and go to work the next day. But when you wake up, they're going to give you the results. The results are about $1,000 that you would normally pay out there, but these are free results. And so they've really recommended to folks, hey, you may have sleep apnea, you need to follow up with the doctor. Or here are some other tips that we have that can help you sleep better. So they can really look at the sleep issues more closely, which I think is a really valuable tool. We're doing positive things for the students because we're sending other students there to practice. And it's not just for students, by the way, it's faculty and staff, anyone, the public, anyone who wants to volunteer for the sleep study, you can. So we're allowing the polysomnography students to get the experience that they need, but we're also addressing our issues in the process. So it's a win-win situation. Counseling services, fitness center, wellness program, intramurals, the videos in Canvas. I just gave you a snippet of it. I won't show the other one, but there are many different little snippets of that and various topics that I think you'll probably find interesting. And then, of course, mindfulness committee events. Financial concerns is number 6. It's interesting because when we talk about your stress level and we talk about work issues, we can't help but to talk about money issues. And so what we found is that students spend a lot of money eating out. And so when they're struggling in my class, I say it's really hard to be good at 2 things at the same time, right? You're either going to be a really good worker or you're going to be a really good student. And if there are no options to cut back on hours, let's do what we can to try to save up. Maybe you take off in the summer and work all you can, and you can work a little bit less in the fall and the spring if you save your money. And so we looked at these things. I recognize that the topic that I taught lends itself to have some of these more intimate conversations in still a professional manner. But if you're teaching anthropology or if you're teaching something else, you may not be able to bring these things up. You can send them to some of the resources. And so what I want to share with you is the Career Center resources, because they have postings for on and off campus employment. They can help you with job search. They can help you with interview skills and resume writing. But one of the other things I want to share is ONET. So if you click on ONET, someone give me a career. Should we put teacher in here? So we're going to say a history teacher. It's going to tell you the task, the skills, the knowledge, abilities, work activities, everything that's involved with being a history teacher, post-secondary history teacher. Then it's going to tell you information about, okay, job zone, talks about some of the education that's required for that. And then even further down, it will tell you the average salary. So when you've got students who are looking for other job opportunities, this is a great place to start. When you've got students who don't know what they want to do and they want to work backwards and narrow things out, like X things off their list, this is a place that you can refer them to because they'll learn more about job tasks. looking at this website unless they have someone in the field that they can work with. The Career Center really does have some really good resources. Student engagement has not in this semester, they don't have it, but they usually have a smart money financial literacy program for students where they talk about managing their money and budgets and things like that. And for students who I saw struggle, who really wanted to do better in school but just didn't have the funds, I would send them to that to just try to let's manage what you have better. We all can do better. We can all save more. One of the other things is the Clifton Strengths for students. This is a test that is given free. You can email student engagement and say, please give me access, or refer the student to student engagement and say, I want to have access to this test. The test usually costs $15. It asks about 50 or 60 nosy questions. It spits out the student's strengths. Sometimes when you have not really given much thought about things, you don't know what you're good at, or you haven't verbalized what you're good at, which I think is really important because that helps you determine where you move in your pathway, where your interests lie. It just gives more support towards those things in a way that puts it in the forefront of your mind to boost your confidence and to know this is in you. And so I think something like Clifton Strengths is a really good tool. I'll give you an example. I had a science professor say that she had a student who was very frustrated. This was an A student, and they wanted to apply to the nursing program. And so they're very, they have to get that A. And the student was being sort of pushy with the professor about things. And the professor didn't quite know how to handle that. And so my suggestion over time with, hey, did you know that, tone can be different in emails? And I just want to make sure you're aware, how your tone is coming across. I'm sure you didn't mean it that way. Well, that nice conversation didn't work. And so I said, let's do this. Let's recommend this student take this strengths test so that they can determine what they're good at, which opens the door to some of the things that they need to work on. And so the professor recommended the test. The student took the test. They opened their eyes to the fact of, oh, I'm not supposed to email you every day and demand that you meet with me so that I can get an A in this course. Oh, I'm not supposed to be that pushy. And so it was a good conversation starter. It helped the student realize that as a nurse, you've got to develop lots of different skills, and here are some of the ones that you bring to the table. How can we develop those more and work in those areas for you? So it was a completely different thought process with the student that they had not been challenged in that way before. One of the other things with financial concerns is the North Texas Food Bank. We have the mobile food pantry that comes on every campus. And I think at least once or twice a semester. That's important. Students need that. We've got a high number of students who just don't have enough food. And they don't have to fill out any forms. They just show up to this mobile food truck that's out in the parking lot, check your emails, they send it out to everyone. They just come, they get a basket, they get to leave. So I think it's a really good tool in a way that we can, again, send an email to a student and saying, hey, I know that you're struggling financially. I want you to know that you have this access to this tool, this free food here that you can take advantage of. Just in case you're interested, 7 through 12, intimate relationships, careers, headaches, but also respiratory illness, family, the health of someone close. I think I've talked ad nauseum about all of the resources that we can use, but understanding how they connect in a different way. Honorable mention, cold, flu, and sore throat. It is not uncommon for your immune system to be depressed when you don't get enough sleep, when you experience stress and anxiety, when you are stressed. And so students I would usually see catch cold and the flu the last 2 weeks of the semester, especially those students whose grade was on the bubble between a D and a C, and they're really worked up because usually if you're struggling in my class, I have to assume that you could be struggling in others. And so it's not uncommon. And I would always bring this to students' attention as we came from spring break or as we come from, this time in October, and just say, look, it's cold and flu season. You need to wash your hands. I need to make sure you're getting enough sleep, make sure you're getting your vitamin C. And that's just a 1-minute blurb at the beginning of class. And again, it was easier for me because my subject lended itself for these types of conversations, but I certainly don't think there's anything wrong with someone teaching English to announce something like this. It just shows that you're willing to go to a deeper level with the students. Poor sleep quality, shorter sleep duration increases the susceptibility for common cold. We talked about that. But again, something like exercise, in particular aerobic exercise, helps to improve immune function, and it can boost the immune system. So I would tell students, hey, give me 40 minutes 3 or 4 times a week. I've got my treadmill in front of my television. And if I want to watch TV, it better be on the treadmill, or else I can't watch television unless I've already done my exercise for the day. And so this is incentive for me to make sure I am consistent with what I've committed to do. So you have to find techniques for that. So resources for cold and flu and sore throat, wellness program, fitness center, intramurals, and rest. I understood, and I know that in COVID times, we don't want students coughing and sneezing and feverish in class. But we also recognize that if you're on the AB schedule and you're coming once a week and you miss that week, now you're like almost 2 weeks behind, right? It's really difficult to get caught up. We have to make sure we try to do what we can. Our president's motto is students first, no excuses. It doesn't mean that we're not following through with our commitment in the syllabus. It doesn't mean that we are not pushing for the same academic rigor. It means that we are flexible and we understand that life happens. And if you get sick, we're going to find a way to work with you for what we think is reasonable. So I always just throw that out there. General support for student can come from student engagement. They have a LEAD program, Leadership Empowerment and Development Programs. And so they have ropes courses and movies and the strengths, Clifton Strengths test that we talked about before. But it's a group of students that come together that they've been identified as leaders, or they're just interested in this type of thing. You could direct students to student engagement for that. Student engagement works hard to try to connect students to each other, right, and to causes that they believe in. And so they have 60 student organizations, and they usually have at least one activity every week. They're doing a lot of work online, but they're doing a lot of good things that help us connect with students and help them connect with each other. So take advantage of that. This slide talks about how to get to the student organization list so that you can see all of the student organizations and activities that we have. When I send this to you, you can log on, or you can download an app on your phone so that you can be aware of what's happening. And some of the professors make these announcements before class, at the start of class, to just say, hey, just want you to know they're giving away free chili in the atrium at the Plano campus from 11 to 2. Students love that. So just being aware of what's happening, I think, can be a good connection. I want to leave you with this bonus resource, which is the dental hygiene clinic. I found that when I asked students, when was the last time you had your teeth cleaned? They had not. And so we're supposed to get our teeth cleaned twice a year, right? Every 6 months or so. And one of the things that falls off is the students have the medical insurance, but they don't always have dental insurance. So this is a lovely resource that students and faculty and staff and the community can take advantage of. So you can go in and get cleaning. Your first visit is a screening. Your second visit is going to be x-rays, but your cleaning is going to cost $20 if you're 13 years or older, and it costs $10 if you're 12 years old or younger. They do put sealants on your teeth for $5, all ages. That's a wonderful thing, because sealants, if you don't know what they are, before you get the cavity, they put the sealant, this I don't know what it is that they put on there, fluoride or something that they put on there, and it keeps you from getting cavities. Now, if you think long term, if you're struggling financially now, the last thing you want is to get a cavity or your kids to get a cavity. So it's going to prevent some of those financial burdens down the road. So I always just share this resource, and not many folks know about it, but the Health Science Center, although they are training our folks to be dental hygienists and polysomnography folks to look at the sleep in the brain, they also offer other services that the community and students can take advantage of. So I've spoken enough. What questions do you have for me?
Well, I want to thank you. This was really, really good information. And I am one at the beginning of each semester. I try to have the counseling department come in and introduce themselves to students, and I have the dean of student services come in. So when you're talking about like the dental and the sleep experience or whatever, are we able to have someone come into our classes to discuss that? Or
Yes and yes. And I'm going to ask you to reach out to them to see if they can get a representative to come over and talk about it. Because remember, they want to recruit students into their program. So it's advantageous for them to have someone go into your classes, because this now sparks an interest, right? You're also teaching the students and saying, okay, you may not have wanted to be a doctor, but you like the medical field. Here's something. And I'll tell you, I didn't even know this existed. I didn't even know it existed. And so what a wonderful tool. It's a great career path for folks. It's a good thing to share. So yes, I'm glad that you'll consider doing that. I will say that I would have students who I felt like could benefit from counseling, but it's a delicate conversation to have, especially with the student or someone you're not that close with, right? And so I would say, I hear that you're struggling. Let's go back to my office and talk about it, right? And I'm not a counselor, so I didn't want to hear all the gory details, but I would say, hey, I know a resource, the counseling services. Would you mind if I walked you there? And most times they would say yes. I say, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take my phone with me, and we're going to walk down the hall and talk together. But when I stop, I'm going to say goodbye to you. Just know that the counseling center is going to be on your left. And this is so that I would acknowledge that other people are around, and no one wants to be seen with their professor going into the counseling center, right? But I would wave and say goodbye, long before we got there, and they could go in, and I said, we never have to have a conversation about your visit. I don't want to know about your visit. I just want you to know that I care, and this is here for you. It's free, it's confidential. Please take advantage of it. I would say 8 out of 10 times, students would let me walk them to the counseling center, and I think they would continue. Some would tell me that they followed up, and some would tell me that that one visit was good to just get it out. They struggle with that. So good. It's good that you're incorporating that in your classes.
yes.
Anybody else have anything?
I do. I have some online classes, and I've noticed in some of my classes that I have some students exhibiting quite a large amount of stress, especially when they're taking their proctored exams. How would you approach working with those students?
You know what I would do? I would reach out to the counseling center, and Carolyn Braswell, Braswell, is, and I think it's Carolyn with a C. But anyone in the counseling center, but she is the person who would come to my classes and talk about stress and talk about those things. I know that they are willing to do have that same conversation in the online environment. And so my first suggestion would be to send out some information about these seminars. But if you really see that it's an issue and it's several students, it might be worth saying, hey guys, I'm going to have a special session tonight. I'm really hoping that you can come. And you invite counseling to come in and talk to your students. And you may do that before you do your lecture. or a Q&A session or office hours, or whatever you think is going to bring the largest number of students to that event that night.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? I can't see the chat. I just see 11. So let's look here. I think we've taken care of everything.
One question that has arisen, Tracy, are you willing to share your PowerPoint with the group?
Yes, absolutely. I will be sending you PowerPoints. I will be sending this lecture. I will be sending you talking points so that when you have to talk about stress, here are the highlighted things you should mention. When you have to talk about depression, these are some of the things you might use to bring up the conversation or some of the resources they have. And then I'll also send you links, physical links in a PowerPoint or in a Word document of all of these resources. Like when it says career services in the PowerPoint, you click on it, but I will send the actual link so that you can copy and paste it or save it or send it to a student in a way that's going to be a benefit to you. Happy to share. Happy to share it all. Well, I think we are nearing our time. We've got about 4 minutes left, but I'm here if you have questions after this is over. I hope that you are able to walk away with at least 1 or 2 tips that maybe you can incorporate in the classroom or with your experiences with students. But this is a team effort. We are all in this together. When a student comes into my office, I still share these resources with them as Associate Dean. If you're a professor, you're on the front lines and you have an even greater opportunity to connect with them. If you're a staff member and whatever you're doing in the 3 minutes, sometimes it may take 6 minutes to develop a relationship, get an email address, and forward the information on. Either way, we play a part. And so I think we have to start looking at student support holistically so that we can improve their lives, we can increase student success, right? Job security, right? If students are here, we're still here. And we want to do the best job we can with that. So thank you for coming. I look forward, if you want to email me of how you've implemented some of the changes, I'd like to hear it.
Thank you so much, Tracy. This was some fantastic information. I took a lot of notes myself and am excited to look into some of these resources.
Excellent.
I do want to share with the group. So we talked a lot about caring for our students today, which is incredibly important. But in a couple of weeks, on the 18th, I will also be offering a webinar about self-care for weary professors. We have to take care of ourselves too. So hopefully you can join us for that as well. Well, thank you so much for being here today, everybody. And thank you, Tracy, for this wonderful presentation and all of this incredibly useful information.
All right. Bye.